a new head coach, trouble in the MLS for Canadian sides, and a lot to talk about in Winnipeg. Not to mention Canadian Championship matches, players getting released, and so much more. There's a lot to talk about. Let's get right into it. This is Footy First. That's right, folks. We are back. Nick McVicker, Niko Giantsopoulos. We've been off for a couple weeks, but we are back. We're ready to go. Niko, how's it going, man?
It's going all right. I'm again middle of the season, traveling around, but doing well. Happy to show back. I mean, Nick, you were down and out for 1 week. Usually it's me for why we can't have episodes because of my schedule, but this time, what happened? The flu, the bug, something
I don't
got you?
even know, man. I was not doing okay this week. I missed a day of work. I never miss days of work. It was bad. It was not good. So I'm glad to be feeling better. I played hockey on Friday night, so that's always a good indication that things are going better. Week off from soccer, but I mean, there's lots of soccer to talk about, so I'm okay in that way. And we got a
Yeah.
lot to cover this week because we haven't had a show for 2.5 weeks now, almost 3 weeks. So we got a lot to cover. I mean, we got Valour is struggling in the CPL. TFC was in a brawl. We got the CPL going on tour. Players getting released all over. But let's start with the Canadian national team because big news coming out of the Canadian national program. The men have a new head coach, and it is former American player Jesse Marsch. I love this appointment. He's taking over from Mauro Bialo, who was on the intern basis, who obviously took over from John Herdman, who's now with TFC. Niko, I really, really like this appointment. I think if it wasn't going to be Bielo or Tommy or Bobby, this was the right guy. He knows North American soccer. He played here. He's been around the North American game when he was manager of Montreal and New York Red Bulls. Everything to me makes sense with this one. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I remember earlier when we were talking about the next national team coach. Within that locker room, the guys there were saying that it's not the MLS guys you need to like convince and get on board. It's more the European guys. The manager needs to, earn their respect. And you bring in a guy like Jesse Marsh that comes with, such big pedigree. Um, you're going to captivate that locker room right away. Also, I think his playing style fits exactly with the kind of players we produce here in Canada. Athletic. It's kind of a high tempo, high press attacking style of football. And that's the kind of players we produce here in Canada. We're athletic in North America in general. Um, but if we were to bring in, a tiki taka kind of coach, that doesn't really fit the style of players that we have in this country. You bring in Jesse Marsh, high press, attacking on the wings. Um, Covering a lot of ground. That's the kind of players that we have, and it's the right age for this generation that we have of Canadian talent as well. So it's a good appointment. Now let's see how he fits into the role. I'm curious if the Canada soccer roadblocks are going to be apparent in his time with this national team. I hope not, and hopefully he's kind of given the reins similar to how it seemed like Herdman was given the reins, kind of given that freedom to make this national team what it was. And if you give him all the tools necessary and all the resources necessary, I'm confident that he will have a successful tenure with the men's national team.
Yeah, and honestly, you talk about the tactics, you talk about how he's going to want to play. He's already talked about some of the stuff that he wants to do with his team. It came out yesterday that he's not going to use Alfonso Davies as a wingback at all. He's going to use him in ways
Saw
that
that.
allow the most productive team on the field. That's kind of the wording that he went off, which doesn't really say where he's going to use him necessarily, but I could see that being he could be inverted on the right wing. He could be in that center role behind the strikers. He could be on the left wing like we've seen him recently for Canada. It doesn't sound like he'll be moved to that wingback role that he's become accustomed to at Bayern. So Marsh is already putting that out there. I don't want Alfonso there because I think he's more valuable other places. I kind of like that. I like that he's coming in and just being like, no, listen, I got an idea for this guy. I want to use him this way. Let's see how he does before people start judging me, right? He's putting his foot down. He's putting a stamp on it. I love it. That's what we need from a new manager. Herdman did the same thing. He came in when he took over from, who did he take over from? It seems so long ago now. I can't even remember. Whoever Herdman took over from. When he came in, he's like, no, this is my team. I'm going to do it my way. Now we got Marsch coming in. He knows the guys from over in Europe, and he knows the North American style of play, right? So this becomes, all right, I know what I want to do. I know who I'm going to put them in when we're playing North American teams, but I also know how to put guys in the right spots when we're playing teams maybe outside of the North American game. Like, let's be honest, when you're playing a team from South America, it's not the same style as when you're playing Trinidad and Tobago on a Wednesday in a waterlogged pitch. It's just not. We can both agree on that, Niko. So I'm interested to see where he's got other guys spotted in his lineup, but from what it sounds like, he's got a lineup that he wants. I'm interested to see where that first game goes.
Yeah, I also wonder now, thinking from a player standpoint, new manager comes in, are guys that maybe haven't been able to get into the camps. Do they feel like this is a clean slate and a fresh start for them to make an impact? Will Jesse Marsch maybe bring in a couple guys that haven't been into camp recently? Will he stick to the kind of the familiar faces that we're used to? That's what I also have my eyes on, and hopefully, because we do have a relatively larger player pool now with players playing at high levels. I think this is going to rejuvenate some players, careers, and give them that extra hunger of trying to get into the national team and trying to impress this new coach. He has a lot of pedigree. He's coached in Europe. He's coached in MLS. I wonder who he has his eyes on. If there's going to be any sleeper picks when his first selection comes around.
Oh, there has to be, and he's gonna be bold. We've seen that when he's been the broadcaster for the last few years since since he was let go by Leeds last year. He's gonna be bold. He had a lot of run-ins with the American coach Greg Berhalter through what he said in the media. Which, you know what, as a Canadian fan, I kind of love that because he's gonna bring a fire to that rivalry that is already red hot. This is a rivalry that has that fire. Now you're going to just bring another level to it. Greg and Jesse will talk in the media. We know that they do. They love talking in the media. Now they have an enemy to go after that they respect, because they have said that many times. They both respect each other. It'll be very interesting to see that first press conference between a game between Canada and the US. What's actually said between these two. As an outsider, I'm very excited for that. It's going to be interesting to see how they kind of go back and forth.
You love the drama.
I love the drama.
Love the high school drama. Shit talking back and forth between the coaches. Who doesn't like that? No, I agree with you. What a incredible first task he's going to have as a national team coach. Though he's going to be playing France and Netherlands in these exhibition matches, and then going up against the best team in the world in Argentina, going up against the best player in the world in Messi. Kind of a baptism of fire. But what a great test. And I feel like that's what this national team kind of like struggled when they went to the World Cup, Mm-hmm. They did great in CONCACAF. It seemed like Herdman really got them to conquer CONCACAF, alliteration aside. But now going into the World Cup and Copas, you have a coach now with a big pedigree, lots of experience. It's an exciting time for the national team and Canada soccer in general. I also wonder if he is going to be playing a role within Canada soccer and trying to, grow the legitimacy and just continue to grow the sport in this country. Or is he more just going to be 100% focused on the men's national team and bringing them success? What do you think?
Based on what we've kind of seen from the new regime with Kevin Blue and those guys, Jesse Marsch will be at the forefront of trying to make Canada soccer legitimate, just because they needed somebody like that. And I mean, we can even go into how his salary is being paid, because it's getting subsidized by the MLS owners. The 3 Canadian MLS owners are subsidizing his salary so that they could bring him in. Because Canada soccer, let's be honest, Canada soccer couldn't afford him at his salary in the current state. That's fine.
What's a guy like him make? What's a salary like that for the men's national team?
I don't know, but let's be honest. Canada soccer lost $10 million last year, so they can't really afford anybody at the moment.
So what do you think? What do you think a salary would be? Like, is it 5 million, or is that too
I
is
was
that
going
too
to say
north?
4 to 6. That was my guess. Might be a little bit more because he does have a bit of pedigree, but I wouldn't say more than 7. Again, we're
Okay,
speculating. I have no idea, right? But
interesting.
we get the 3 MLS owners are subsidizing the salary so that Canada Soccer could bring him in because they know how important a manager of his caliber is to the growth of the game here in Canada. So obviously they're going to put him at the forefront of everything they can to try to legitimize how good Soccer Canada is getting on the men's side. Obviously the women's side, we don't really need that. They're already a top team. No real legitimate issues going on other than when they show up to a World Cup. But Olympics, they show up really well. They play really well against the U.S. and stuff like that. So like they're still a top team. They're top 5 almost every time there's a FIFA regular.
The women would say there's issues going on within that team, though, off
uh,
away from the field.
Different issues we're talking about. We're talking about making the Canadian soccer team legitimate in the world rankings and the world eye. The women's team's already there. The men's team is in a different level right now. They're trying to get there. If we're talking off the field issues, that's a different conversation. And yes, off the field issues, there's a lot of them, and they're going to have to sort that out. And Jesse Marsch will probably help with that as well. But as of right now, I know he's going to be interested in actually just taking over the team and getting things set for that Copa. I want to ask you a question. I didn't have this written down anywhere. I'm just going to throw it off the top.
Before I think,
Okay, go.
a couple clicks for the MLS owners for stepping in and
Absolutely.
help subsidize the salary. I think good for them. I mean, MLS has taken such a step forward in recent years. So for them to come in and recognize that, because there's always this background talk going how the MLS is not supporting Canada soccer and the CPL and all that stuff. So for them to come in and subsidize the salary to bring in such a coach with such pedigree,
Agreed.
good for you.
100%.
MLSC, Saputo, and Kerfoot at Whitecaps. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. It's a valid point. They needed, they didn't need to, but they felt the need to do something, and what they did, I think, is going to actually help Canada soccer in the long run by doing this. I'm not so sure about how I like the naming
stunt
of the head coach, because now it's like the MLS Canadian men's head. I was kind of confused by that, but
that's a Twitter title.
yeah, it's a title.
When he's going at Copa and they show his name there, it's going to be manager, head coach.
Yeah, I hope so.
It's not going to be
I
that
hope so.
ridiculous title that I saw on Twitter.
I hope so. But anyways, the question that I have for you, Niko, you mentioned the first 3 games that he's going to be in charge. We got France, we got Netherlands, and we got Argentina, right? New head coach coming into a very busy season, not having a whole lot of lead up time. He's got about 2.5 weeks before those first 2 games, and then I think another 2 or 3 weeks after that to get ready for Copa. I believe that's the time frame I'm thinking.
Yeah, in the summertime.
Right? What realistically are we expecting from those 3 matches? Like, are we looking at 0 for 3, or are we at least maybe hoping for a draw? Like this, I'm asking as a realistic standpoint, and what are you looking for from those 3 matches?
Well, first of all, what I'm looking for is in results in those first 2 matches. First, I'm trying to see the system, the formation, the player selection. That's what my eyes are going to be for, especially for those first 2 games. They are friendlies.
Yep.
There's no implications for them. So that's his time where, as fans, we should just give him full freedom to do what he wants to do and tinker with the lineup, tinker with the tactics as much as he can. Going into that first game against Argentina, I want to see a competitive Canada team. Obviously, Argentina is this juggernaut in this world football. Messi, have you heard of him? I have. Pretty good player. But we are now getting to the point in Canada soccer where we want to be competitive in anything. We're not this minnow in soccer and world soccer anymore, where we could just get beat 3-4-0 and just kind of be embarrassed. I want to see a competitive game in that Argentina game, and that's what I'll be looking for. Tactics in the first 2, squad selection, and then a competitive, challenging game for Argentina. I want us to impose our style on them, and I don't want them to have an easy game. They may win. I don't want to focus too much on results, but I want Argentina leaving the field with respect for Canada.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you. I don't necessarily need to see the results. The one thing I would like to see, though, I don't want to go 3 games without a goal. And that's the one thing that we've struggled with playing teams outside of CONCACAF. We don't tend to score a whole lot. We saw in the World Cup, we got 1 goal in 3 matches. I would like to at least get a goal and put pressure on these sides. These are top teams. I understand that. The results probably aren't going to be there in the win column. But if we can at least try to push and force our game for parts of the match and not allow them to just impose every single will on us, then that, I think, is a positive start. As you mentioned, the tactics, the squad selection, all that is very, very important as well, and I'm looking for that, which, by the way, I think his squad might be selected this week, so we'll keep an eye on that as it comes out. The American roster got named today. TFC's Sean Johnson made the American roster, by the way, for June. So
Deserved.
there we go. The more that we see the squad rotation and the more that we see this team kind of put together their whole side, I'm interested to see that. So it'll be interesting how they kind of play. And as long as they kind of come out with a little bit of fire and try to score a goal, I'll be very, very interested going forward, because that means they're imposing their will on top teams. And that's hard to do. It is.
Yeah, no. It's just crazy because then, I say that and then I just, as you're talking, I'm thinking about like Messi, and it's just like, it's crazy at the different level that he is at. I mean, I didn't expect him to come to the MLS and just terrorize the league and kind of it really makes you think like how good the level is out in, the leagues that he was playing in, those top 5 European leagues. So again, I said, I want to be competitive against Argentina, but again, these are the world champions.
What does competitive mean?
They go in with a strong.
What does competitive mean, though? As long as we can showcase, like, if we're not getting beat 5-0 and they're imposing everything on us, that's showcasing, in my opinion.
I've been a part of games where I've lost 2-0, but we weren't competitive.
Right.
And at no point did I feel like we were competing. It just, we were surviving.
Exactly. If we can compete, even if we don't get a result, if we can compete, that's a positive. I think we can both agree on that.
Yeah. We'll see. It'll be really interesting, and a big moment for Canada soccer. We're going to be really on the world stage now.
Yes.
Probably the first time since the World Cup. So 3 years later, let's see how we do. It's a big moment.
It's a huge moment.
Everyone wants Canada soccer to grow now, and we've been asking for these big games, these challenging opponents, and now we're going to get them. We got our head coach. Everyone seems relatively happy with the coach now, so the excuses are going to be coming far less, and we're going to need to see results. Fans are going to start demanding to see results if we're a serious football country.
Well, I mean, they kind of demanded to see results during that World Cup too, so we didn't necessarily get them. But
they did. No. They did. And then as soon as, they lost, it's like, we haven't been here in 32 years.
I know. Then the excuses came out.
And stuff like that. Exactly. It switched up real quick. Everyone going into it was all. So, no, I don't agree.
Fair enough. All right. Well, you mentioned Messi in the MLS. It's been a crazy 2 weeks for MLS sides. Well, 2.5 weeks, 3 games, because the whole table's turned upside down. Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal combined for 1 victory in 9 MLS matches. Toronto coming out with it just this past weekend over Montreal, which was a guaranteed 1 win or at least a point for the MLS sides. Vancouver did pick up a draw in this time, but it has been a struggle the last 3 weeks for all 3 sides. And we can go back to the first match for TFC. Their struggle led to a brawl and multiple suspensions for big players, although they did respond this weekend in a huge way when because Prince Owusu still has one game suspension that he had to serve this weekend. Most of the players came back. They won 5-1 against Montreal, and the 1 goal against was very not indicative of how the game was going. Toronto dominated that game. But the rest of the weeks, it's been a struggle for TFC as well as Vancouver and Montreal. I mean, Montreal had a tough season, period. 1 win in 9 matches is not a good look for the 3 Canadian sides.
I've been speaking to Vancouver people here, and they're furious with you. They're saying that you jinxed them.
I
As
jinxed
soon
them.
as you said that, they're saying as soon as you said that they should be competing for the World Cup, the Gold Cup, the MLS Cup, the regular season title, and all that, they haven't won a game since you said that.
True.
And I'm walking down the street and people are booing me. Like, hey, tell Mick Vicker he blew it. He blew it first.
No, it's
So
been
what
a
do you have
tough
to say
slide.
to that?
I mean,
Thoughts,
I
Nick?
feel bad. I don't want to jinx anybody, but I do think this squad's good enough to get out of it. But this has pushed them down to 7th in the West standings. Like they're gonna have to climb back if they want to be at the top come the come the end of the season. They don't have a win in their last 5 MLS matches though. They got 2 draws and 3 losses in the last 5. I don't know. Nothing's really changed. I know they've played some tougher competition, but I still expected them to get results over the last 5. Maybe not all 5 wins, but at least a win or two.
Yeah, I think the draw against was it Austin? The draw against Austin, it was 1-1. It was at home. I think they were very disappointed. It was like
That
the
was they
it
drew
was it
1-1
was the
against the
home
Red
game.
Bulls and 0-0
Yeah, and it
against
was like the
Austin.
50th alumni game as well. It was a big event at
Yeah,
home.
that was the
They were
Austin
definitely
one. It
the
was
better
0-0.
team.
0-0 against Austin.
No, sorry. That's right. Um, that was a game where they were the deserving team to win. I was at that game. I was watching. They had an early disallowed goal, which kind of changed the trajectory of the game. But again, I didn't necessarily fully agree with you when you said they could win this, all the trophies they're in this year. But what I do see from this Vancouver team, if we're just going to focus on them, is this team is still a very competitive team. They're, for the most part, in every game that they play in. So if this team, which I think they will end up in a playoff spot and go into the playoffs, this is a playoff ready team if they can stay healthy. They play a difficult style to break down. Vanny's system, they sit in that block. They're organized. The players are buying into Vanny's system. Again, when I talk about sitting in that defensive shape, that's always the hardest part to convince attacking minded players. You guys got like Gold. It starts with Gold and Brian White up front, and they all
Agreed.
shift very well going to the back. But again, this is a playoff ready team if they can qualify when the times come. So I'm not too worried about them. This is a lull in their season. They're not happy about it. I expect them to bounce back out of it. And again, top 5 in the West is probably the goal for this team. And if they could challenge, in the top 2, top 3, it's will be a bonus. But if I'm a Vancouver Whitecaps fan, I'm not worried. They're
Yeah,
ready for playoffs. This will be a good team.
I'm not super worried about them. Let's make that very clear. They've had a crazy schedule for the last 5 weeks with all the Canadian Championship games going in. The other MLS teams, a couple of them had US Open games, but not all of them. So they're not all playing the same number of games that these Canadian MLS sides are playing, right? We talked about 1 win in the last 9 for the 3 MLS teams. That has a lot to do with the fact that they're going weeks with 3 games. There's 1 week that TFC had 3 games in 6 days, right? Like, it just happens. So you have to take that with a grain of salt. I think they're going to bounce out of this. It's a tough schedule. It's a tough call. CPL sides are doing the same thing, right? But the difference is all of the CPL sides are pretty much still going. There's a couple, obviously, that are out, but they're all still playing the same sort of schedule. It's tough. They're going to bounce out of it. They're going to be okay. But they do face a bit of an uphill climb now to get back into that top 5 that we talked about, maybe top 4. I would much prefer them to make that top 4, get the home game in the first round, right? Force someone to come into that BC Place arena when it's bumping, like you said in that 50th anniversary game. It was loud, I heard. You said you were going, but
I was there.
Yeah. I heard it was loud. I heard it was ruckus at the beginning, and then the game kind of dulled it down. But if you could get that going and you could get that momentum going right out of the gate in a packed BC Place, that can become a pretty big home field advantage if done right.
They play exciting football. I went with my partner, and she was at the game with me, sitting next to me. She's normally on her phone, doesn't give a shit about soccer. She was like,
Yeah.
oohing and awing with the style of attacking football that they were playing. She looked at me, like, "Oh, that was a sick play. What the hell? Who are you?" So they're inspiring people that don't give two shits about soccer
Exactly.
at these games. So it's an exciting team to watch, and there's still plenty of positives. It's a lull in the season, a long
Absolutely.
season. If you follow most teams, previous years, there's always this week, but it's how quick can they get out of it? It's
Mhm.
been going on a bit too long, and I think they're happy with, and their fans are happy with. But again, it's not that negative. It's not like Montreal right now, who is really struggling, and they just can't seem to get in a rhythm. Even if they do get a somewhat good result, it's followed up by then a negative.
Yeah, and
So I'm more worried if I'm them.
I was just gonna transition to Montreal because you're right. Like their MLS season is in shambles right now. They're really struggling. They can't seem to string more than one result together. And you can even attest that to the Canadian Championship, right? They got a result in the Can Champ game against Forge, and then they came out with a huge loss against TFC. Like they can't string anything
Wait,
together.
wait, that's not a good result against Forge.
They got a
That's a
result, I
terrible
said.
result.
I said they got
Is
a
it,
result.
okay, if you're a Montreal fan, are you happy with that result?
You got the win on the road in the Can Champ. Are you happy with it? No, but you got the win and you're going in.
They tied
I thought they. Oh no, they tied. You're right. I'm thinking
1-1,
Vancouver. I'm thinking
and they were
Vancouver
down.
Caps. Sorry, I was thinking Vancouver Caps score line. My apologies. You're right. Yeah. So they didn't even get a good result. You're right. So they can't string anything together. And there was talk about Chouanier wanting out. Now he's backtracked that and said I never said that. He's denying it. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes that obviously we're not privy to. But they're not doing well as a club right now, and they're going to struggle moving forward. I worry about this side imploding on Courtois, and if he can't get things going, it might be a short-lived tenure for Laurent Courtois as the manager of CF Montreal. But I also think that comes down to a few other factors, and I don't necessarily blame him, but it's just the nature of the beast, as we know.
Yeah, it really makes me then think if I'm a Montreal fan going back 3 years ago when they had Wilfred Nancy
Yeah.
as the head coach and basically let him go because they didn't want to give him the resources that he felt necessary. I mean, that seemed like the turning point for CF Montreal. He's
It has
gone
been.
on and basically just rubbed it in their face by winning an MLS Cup with Columbus and just playing the exact same style of football with Montreal players on his team. Mo Farsi.
Yeah.
It's that's got to burn bad if you're a CF Montreal fan. Another thing that's really been like a kick in the nuts for Montreal is when Joseph Martinez went down. This was a really big signing. He's coming back after playing with Messi. He's obviously a notorious MLS goal scorer, and then he goes down with a long-term injury, which has really just killed the confidence of an attacking team. Defensively, they're still staying with that three in the back with Joel Waterman mostly in the middle. Um, I think they're struggling as a defensive unit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's necessarily one particular player, but I think they've lost their main goal scorer going into the season, Joseph Martinez, and then it just seems the defensive responsibilities as the entire team is struggling, and that's never going to be a recipe to get wins in the MLS.
No, and you talk about Joseph going down. That's a huge loss. No one else has stepped up. Sunisi Ibrahim has shown small flashes, but nothing crazy. Chouanier has been their best player going forward, but he needs help. There's only so much one winger can do on an attacking formation. He's not getting any help really. I don't see a whole lot of attacking options on that side. I get that. They're not flush with attacking options like say an Inter Miami team, right? But defensively I was watching the game on Saturday. They had no structure. Every time they went forward, 8 guys went forward, and then there'd be 2 back going up against 4 TFC players. And it's not like they were quick on the counterattack, TFC, but like when you get given that kind of advantage, you're going to capitalize most of the time. And Bernadeschi just ripped Montreal apart. I felt really bad for Jonathan Sirois because I thought he actually made a couple huge saves in that match. And normally, if you make a couple huge saves, your team stays in it, and it's a closer like 2-1, maybe a 3-2 sort of thing. It was 3-0 after 20 minutes. Like he got buried.
Yeah, he got shellacked. Um, if there's any silver lining though, and if I'm thinking about this Montreal team, is that you have a lot of young
Yeah.
players. Duke, Joel's still young. Joel Waterman, Sirois in goal. Chouanier is still young. There's more players. They're getting lots of experience in this time. They're getting a lot of
They're learning
game experience.
they're learning how to lose too, which is not necessarily a good thing, but at least it gives you that experience of, okay, we know how to do this. Now let's figure out how to do the other side and win.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I guess they're learning how to lose. It'll make them if they could stick together as a group again. It could you could still get something out of the season. It's still very early. It'd be stupid to like give up, but eventually things need to start clicking for this team. Or like you said, it's just going to be a year where come August, there's nothing really much to play for because you'll just be so far out of it, and that's not what you want. You still want your fans to be in it. Again, really deflating for the fans to lose against TFC. That's a massive rivalry for them, and it doesn't feel good.
It's not even just the loss though. Like they got
How they lost.
they got outplayed from the kickoff in every facet of the game. They maybe should have had another goal when Sunisi Ibrahim missed the wide open net on the cross that took a deflection. I'll give them that. But nothing that they got was like really pressuring TFC, and everything was second half. That first half, TFC walked them off the pitch. Like you could have put a group of 17-year-old Ontario provincial players out there. And
Stop it.
No, let me finish the statement. And it probably would have looked very similar. There was just Montreal had nothing going forward in the first half. Second half they looked better. But again, I'm obviously being hyperbolic, but I'm just trying to like get across. They didn't show up for a rivalry week game against their biggest rival. They didn't show up in the first half. And when you don't show up in the first half against a team that has found their scoring touch in TFC, with Bernadeschi being healthy, Insigne getting back, Spicer finding his footing now in the MLS, and Longstaff as well. And when he's there, Prince Owusu's kind of found his scoring touch too. They're finding their way to play going forward, and it's working, right? So I'm not saying that they're an easy team to play against. They're not. They're a very strong offensive team, but you have to at least show up. They were down 3 goals in the first 20 minutes.
So would you say that game, and don't say both, was that game more of Montreal being bad or TFC being so good?
I think it was more Montreal being bad in the first half. I do, again, I'm saying I think they were better in the second half. In my opinion, it probably should have been 2-2 in the second half. If Ibrahim could have scored that one that was a sitter in front of the net, right? Took a weird deflection. I get that, but still, you got to angle your body towards the net, not away from the net when the ball's coming across the box. That's basic logical soccer positioning. Should have been 2-2. They showed up in the second half. They did not show up in the first half, and I think that's why it's probably more on them not playing well than TFC playing well. As TFC did play, I think it's more on Montreal.
Yeah. And I think this is a good time to transition to TFC. I mean, you did mention earlier how they got in that, tussle with New York City FC. Herdman, is he up to his old mind games again with, trying to galvanize the group, get them together? I'm hearing things like he made up, he told the players that, the head coach of New York City punched him, but he really didn't. But the players got all fired up about it. And, it brought, they lost the game about New York City, but, sometimes a fight. I mean, last year preseason, here's a little funny inside story. So Houston Dynamo, York United went to Houston for preseason last year. First 2 weeks of the MLS, maybe even 3, Houston didn't win a game. Houston Dynamo, they lost. They were playing poorly, everything. While York United is in Houston for a preseason game, for a preseason trip, the first team at Houston Dynamo was like, hey, they had a bye week that we happened to be in Houston. They scheduled a game against us. This is Houston Dynamo's first team, and they played us in an exhibition game, and they played their starting 11. They played Herrera, Their starting goalie was in, their back line was there, everything. They played their top 11 players against York United in preseason. In the first 20 minutes, something happened. I think Paris kind of got stepped on, or Max got tackled. Paris stepped in, and then kind of like a little brawl, a little tussle started off.
Oh God.
I had Brian Wright was in a headlock. Benches were basically cleared,
Okay,
and a
hold on
little
before you
scrap
continue.
happened.
Before you continue, of course Brian got in a
Yeah.
headlock. I've known that guy forever. Of course he got in a headlock. Anyways, continue.
Ricci was sprinting off the bench trying to fight. Anyways, Houston gone. There was a little like tussle in the field. Houston after that game, whatever, move on. Their season turned on from that point. So we were always saying at York, we basically turned Houston Dynamo's season around because we started to beef them. They fought. They came together as a team. They clicked, and then they turned it on the MLS. And didn't they go to the MLS final last year, or like the Western Conference
I think they went to the
finals
West
last year?
final. We can look it up, but I think they went deep in the playoffs. They didn't go to the final. I'm pretty sure, but
Because of York United, because of that fight. So I'm long winded here, but what I'm saying is that brawl with New York City, it seemed like it got this team together. Herdman, like I said, got his mind games going. This group came together. You have Bernadeschi and Insigne were walking all over Bob Bradley last year,
yeah.
and basically all of Toronto last year. These guys look like they'll die for John Herdman. It's so impressive. I don't know what Herdman has about him where he could get. I thought he could just do it with the Canadian men's national team players. It's like, okay, wow, that's pretty impressive. He did that. Can he do it with like
A club.
top level talent like Bernadeschi and Insigne? And he's convinced them to
They've bought in.
Do everything for him. Bought in. Exactly. It's incredible, and lit a fire in their ass. And unfortunately, Montreal just felt that wrath and just copped a beating. But it's just so wicked to see. If I'm a TFC fan, I'm loving John Herdman right now. I'm loving what he's gotten out of Bernadeschi. Again, I'm not surprised that Bernadeschi is tearing it up. He was on fire at the beginning of his TFC career, and he's picking up that form even more so now. It seems like he's a leader in this group as well, along with Insigne.
Oh yeah, the guys look to him. You can tell on the
great to
pitch.
see.
Anytime anything goes on, the guys are looking over to Bernadeschi after a play and be like, "That good? Like, did I make the right play?" He clearly has a leadership role with this side, which is great. Like that's what they brought him in to do alongside Insigne. Like that was the whole point, is to bring these super talented players and help the young guys become super talented. Now we're seeing the fruits of that because they're both healthy, they're both playing well, and the team is riding high off of that when they're going together.
Yeah, Insigne is not hitting his peak yet, though.
No,
He's just coming back
that's
from that
also
injury.
scary.
He's still not for sure. But EFC we really haven't seen Insigne at his peak
No,
since he's come to Toronto. I
I
mean,
agree.
Bernadeschi has been firing at a high clip for a long time now. If we could
Bernadeschi,
get
when they
Insigne,
got here, Bernadeschi was playing really well for 5-10 matches, and then he got hurt. And then Insigne played really well. Remember those? It was like a 4-week stretch where he had 3 just ridiculous goals, right? And he was always in the goal of the week for the MLS. And then he got hurt, and then everything kind of just fell apart last season, right? Like the whole side, they couldn't get back into it. They couldn't find their footing. The start of this year, Insigne was playing good, not great. Bernadeschi started playing really well. And then Insigne got hurt, and we've been waiting to see them both play well. If he can come back in the next couple weeks and be fully healthy and ready to go, they could be really scary. And they now have a guy up front who's putting the ball in the back of the net in Owusu, right? You have, as I mentioned, Spicer as well is playing well. Oso's playing well. The more that they can get guys like Insigne and Bernadeschi to play at the top of their level, will just pick the other guys up even more. I'm really excited to see if that happens. Will we see it? I don't know, but that's the goal right now.
and second half of the season, if you could get Larea healthy and getting into a run of games, if you could put him on
not
the
suspended.
side. Yeah, well, that's the fire that he plays with, and that's why we all love him. I like it. I don't mind that from Larea. I think that's like his X factor a little bit as a player. He always plays with that he plays on the edge, kind of like those hockey players. But if we could get Larea on Insigne's side as well, when Insigne is healthy and playing larger minutes, I think that'll take some of the defensive responsibilities off of Insigne and it will allow him to kind of get that offensive freedom so he can be firing at a clip similar to Bernadeschi. Bernadeschi, he's younger, he's fitter, he's more athletic. We're going to need him to be playing more both sides of the ball. I think on this TFC team, if there's going to be only one player that kind of lacks defensively, it's going to be Insigne. And for that to happen, you're going to need the outside fullback to be kind of picking up his slack. And I think a guy like Larea is going to be able to do that.
Yep, I agree 100%. Let's go from a team that – oh, go ahead.
Wait, I also want to point out the bear hug from Sean Johnson in that brawl in New York City. He gets headbutted. I don't know. If someone headbutts me, I'm going to snap. The fact that he gets headbutted, basically, he does snap and gets him and just wraps him up and like bear hugs him and basically squeeze him. He basically it's such a power move there. He basically wraps him up. Basically says like, I could kill you, but I'm choosing not to. But just so you know, like I could kill you right now. I love that. That is, if I saw that, I'm like, if I ever happen to be put in a situation like that, I'm going to keep that in my back pocket. Because honestly, if he would have just smashed that guy's face in, I wouldn't have even thought one thing negatively about Sean John. I'm like, yeah, fair enough. Deserve. I don't blame him.
But here's my question for you, okay? Now you're not a player. You're on the management side of the league, okay? His bear hug, do you think that actually saved him from getting more games in his suspension? He only got one. If he ended up going back and punching the guy, do you think he gets more?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So by doing that, by making that power move, he saved himself from a longer suspension.
I'm saying, bro, it's like
it was
the cerebralness, but the cerebralness of being, bro, you get headbutted in the face, you could break your nose. This slime ball headbutt, what a dirty play to do in a professional soccer game. Like, are you kidding me? A headbutt? That's so dirty. Let alone on a bar fight on a professional soccer game, you headbutt. So yeah, so cerebral to get there and just be like, I could kill you, but I'm gonna be professional and not do this. Like,
I'm just gonna
I like seeing
I'm gonna talk straight to your face and tell you how dumb of a move that was.
He gets a little
like you can see him
with his forehead, but still wicked from him.
Agreed.
I rate that.
Agreed. Now let's go from one team who has things going in the right direction to a team that is definitely not heading in the right direction. We got to talk about Valour. I know we talked about the beginning of the season before with Halifax, Valour, Montreal. When do you hit the panic button? They are really struggling to start this CPL season. They have not won a game yet, and they're out of the Can Champ as well. 6 games to start the season. They have 3 goals across all competitions, and they've given up 20. Like, at some point, something needs to change. And I understand, we've talked about it. They weren't necessarily healthy coming into the season. I get that. But man, there is some serious red flags coming up from this Valour team who struggled last year too.
Every year that they've been in the CPL, Valour has struggled. And that goes for most CPL teams. There's only been, 3 or 4 teams that have had consistent success in this league. The rest of the teams are still trying to figure it out. But Valour has been stuck near the bottom in most of those years.
They had one year where they weren't dead last, I'm pretty sure. One. Like, it's not
They're trying to trade in that wooden spoon.
Yeah, it's not good.
So I'll start with you, Nick. Where do you think things need to change? But results aside, but if you're Phil Dos Santos, if you're management, what changes for this team?
Well, listen, if you look at the roster, and we said it preseason, I don't know where the goals are going to come from. So if you know that about your roster going in, I know they have a couple players up top, but they need service. I don't know where the goals are going to come from. If you know that going into a season, you build your back end like a rock. You do not give up a lot of chances. Whereas in the 6 games that they've played, I think 3 of them, they've given up 4 or more goals. Like that can't happen. That can't happen consistently. So whether you need to bring in new players to help build out that defense to limit the leaking that is happening on the defensive side, or whether you just need to get a system in place for the guys that you have. And that could be a different issue altogether, and we can talk about that after. They need something to change on that defensive end to even give them a prayer to get some results moving forward. Because right now, you cannot be giving up 2 to 7 goals a game and hope to win matches in the CPL. That's not realistic every single week. Yes, you're going to have the odd week where you're giving up 3 or 4 goals because the team just gets hot, right? Like we've seen York get hot in the last couple games, and Brian and Austin are doing some really good things going forward. We saw you guys at the beginning of the season. 4 goals back to back, right? Like there is ways to there are going to be teams that are just riding a hot streak and they come in and they pot 3. You cannot be giving up more than 2 goals every single match. It is not realistic to keep momentum going. And if you are leaking goals every single game, and most of these games, the goals are coming early against them, listen, at that point, you really have to question either the players on the backside or the system that you have the players playing in the back end, because something's not right. So if it was me, I'd be looking at my defensive structure and my defensive players and seeing, okay, either my structure needs to change and I need to go to a 3 at the back with 2 wing backs to just add a couple more bodies in there, or we need to bring in players in the midseason and restart and rebuild. That's where I'm at.
Mm-hmm. For me, and I agree with you. I mean, defensive. If I'm a coach and my team is not getting results, I'm looking at, all right, let's tighten up defensively and then look forward. For me, I'm looking at CPL veterans on this squad, and that's who I'm gonna put pressure on, and that's who I am gonna look to step up. And in saying that, I'm gonna look at the spine of the team. I'll start from the top. Sean Hundle, Canadian. He's been in this league for a long time. He's shown in moments of his career that he can score goals. I'm going to challenge Sean to, start getting more shots on net. Start, converting on some of those chances that you get, even if it's 1 or 2. Fire at a more efficient rate. So Sean Hundle up top of him. In the midfield, again, sticking to the spine. Dante Campbell, for me, he's actually been the brightest spot for Valour this year.
Agreed.
I think he needs a little help in the midfield. So now I'm going to look at Noah Verhoeven. Those are now 2 on the younger side, but now they're getting up in age. They're now mid-20s. They're CPL veterans as well. Noah's been in the league since the beginning.
Absolutely.
I'm going to be leaning on those guys to step up, control the midfield. Again, do your defensive responsibilities, take care of the ball, try to get the team going forward. But again, keep the team organized in the midfield, control the tempos of the game. If you go down early, try to grab control of the game. The midfield is the engine of every team. So I'm going to look at those 2 guys, Noah Verhoeven and Dante Campbell, to step up in this moment for Valour.
Yep.
In the back line, center backs, Taz, Murtakutis, obviously, and Samake. Samake, been in this league, I believe, from the beginning, CPL veteran. Has plenty of experience, has been in the league long enough, has played on 2 different clubs now. He knows what this league's about. I'm looking at those 2 guys to step up defensively. I want to see them paired up as a center back duo. Those 2, the Greek fellow. For me, let's see Taz and Samake, see how they work together. Can they find some kind of chemistry? Can they be leaders from the back? Can they galvanize this group? I would look at them to step up. Phil Dos Santos, when he signed Taz Murtakutis, he said how big of a signing he was for him. He was one of the first players that he looked at in the offseason to sign.
And it says
for
a
me,
lot
when
about
a coach gives you, when the coach gives you all that confidence and puts it out there, in the media, in the public, for me as a player, I would feel a lot of responsibility. And now it's my time, now that he's healthy. He should be starting this game against Halifax. This is a player who's played at a good level, the A-League in Australia. I know Taz personally. He's that guy that wants the responsibility. I'm going to put the pressure on him to step up. I want him to start being that leader from the back. And then finally, in the back, they brought in a 32-year-old goalkeeper, Jonathan Viscosi. not a CPL veteran, but definitely a Canada soccer veteran. He's injured right now, and Darlington, who's been in the league for now quite some time, one of those two goalies need to step up, need to say it's their goal. And now, if you got that spine right, and those guys take the responsibility and put the pressure on themselves to perform week in, week out, again, they don't have to be perfect, but they need to be putting in the effort. I think that's how this Valour team and results can start turning around. Before we can even get to the June transfer window and bringing in new guys,
Yeah.
you built this squad when they started this season. I'm sure they were confident going into it. Rely on your spine and your CPL veterans and your leadership to take control and kind of steady this ship. Phil Dos Santos, players, coaches, anyone that's worked with him, I haven't heard a single negative thing about him.
No.
So I think he's a great coach to have at Valour. I've heard things where it's difficult to recruit to Winnipeg. You know, some say the city's boring. It's just bland. Obviously, the club hasn't had much success, but I still have tons of confidence in Phil at being the head coach there. So put Phil at the helm and you lean on those spine leadership veterans. That's how Valour gets out of this rut. That's the only way. If those guys don't step up, it's going to be very difficult for things to change.
I agree with you. And you mentioned the spine, and I'm a big proponent of building through the spine. We've talked about this off air before. One of my old coaches, I've had conversations with him about the CPL. Recently, I still work with him in broadcasts and stuff. He's usually my color commentator when I call soccer and football games. We've had conversations multiple times about how the CPL is, and we talked about Valour and their struggles and what they really need to do. The spine is the exact same thing. You mentioned all of those guys right down the middle. If you do not have a good spine on a team, you are done. I'm sorry. You look at all the championship sides from across the world in every single league, and you can point out 4 or 5 guys right down the middle that make up that spine that allow them to be as successful as they are. Right? We can go, if you want, we can go Man City. They just won their 4th straight title. Right? Holland, De Bruyne, the 2 center backs. Right there. Boom. 4 players right down the middle that build that entire team. And then you build good players around them, and it makes your team even better. But you need that spine to start. And Valour, again, Tass being hurt at the beginning of the season didn't help. I understand that. But their spine doesn't look like it's connected. It's almost like it's in 3 separate sections, and they're not connecting right now. And until those guys, the 5 that you mentioned, can all connect all the way up through the middle, they're going to struggle. They had to bring in a new keeper today. They signed Sviatek Artemenko.
Yeah, Svat.
They were actually signing a different keeper, Kur, but his international transfer was not done on time, so they needed to bring in a new keeper while the main guy's hurt. So Svat is making his lineup.
But that's the thing. You said the main guy. Right now, I don't think they have a main.
The guy that they brought in the offseason. Sorry,
Jonathan. Viscosi.
That's what I meant. Sorry, because he's hurt.
Yeah.
So it's a short-term deal.
Right now, Sven has been brought in on a short-term deal. Again, he'll very much be the backup right now. Darlington has been given the gloves. He's given the net. From a goalkeeping standpoint, he needs to step up. I read an article. He's ready for the moment. He's wanted this opportunity. He knows Phil believes in him. But actions speak louder than words, and you need to step up. But again, I think this is, and I mean, when you're in a locker room like this and you keep losing, sometimes this stepping up, that spine can step up off the pitch.
Yes,
in that locker room,
they have to,
instilling confidence in the rest of the team. Guys that are new to this league, new to this country, you start the way Valour has started. Fucking hell. What a difficult, it's tough to find confidence in you. But again, you lean on those CPL veterans that are in that locker room to have conversations, bring this group together. Again, I know Phil will also do his part in bringing this group together. It's going to have to start in the locker room, and then that'll carry on into the pitch. Big moment for them this year. The 2 teams that don't have a win, Halifax and Valour, are playing today. So again, any Valour fans that are listening to this, look towards those guys if you want to see your team turn around.
Listen, and we're kind of bashing them a little bit right now, but unfortunately, that's what we're talking about them playing poorly. Unfortunately, that's just how it's been. We really do. I mean, I've said this since CPL started. I want every team in the CPL to be competitive because then I think that makes the league better. Is that possible? No, it never is. But you never want to see a team struggle like they are right now. So hopefully they can find it. Before we move on to going on tour with the CPL, is this time to maybe start looking for a new coach if you're Valour? Dos Santos has been in place for 2 years now. Is it time, or is this something that's a little bit deeper than just making a head coaching change?
Yeah, I think it's deeper. And again, I could see from the outside people thinking that, but if you have, again, people assuming that if you have no knowledge of Dos Santos as a coach, what the locker room thinks of him, what people within Canada Soccer, within the CPL think of him, I think Valour has a difficult hand that they're dealt. Tough place to recruit, to bring people in. But again, people just talk about Phil in a very positive manner. So I wouldn't be blaming Phil. Could maybe the team been built slightly different with maybe more CPL experience? And then if you want to put some of that blame on Phil as a GM, because he has that dual role, yes, maybe. But as for a head coach of a CPL club, if I'm Valour, I'm sticking with him. That's my guy right now.
I agree with you. I don't think it's a coaching issue. I think it is a lot deeper than just the head coach. I think Phil is a great coach. I don't think he's really showcased that, unfortunately, in the CPL with his time with Valour. But again, I think it has more to do with the situation around Valour than his actual head coaching ability. Everyone I've talked to about Phil, like behind the scenes, I talked to a bunch of coaches. I talked to a lot of people in the media. Everyone I've talked to says the same thing, that this guy knows the game and is a good coach. But at some point, something needs to change in the results too.
Yeah, he cares. It's so funny with coaching and stuff like that. Like, at what point are like people just going to blame the players? Like, blame us. We're the ones going out there and losing.
And that's why I wanted to ask the question to you as a player. Do you think it's time to change the coach, or do you think it's something deeper? Because it's interesting to see that perspective. I agree with you that I think it's something deeper. I don't think Dos Santos is the problem. Just like I don't think Patrice is the problem in Halifax this year. Both teams are off to really poor starts, but I think both of them, the head coaching is not the problem. But unfortunately, in professional sports, the head coach is the guy who always takes the blame and is the one who gets let go the fastest. We just saw it with the Leafs. Are you telling me Keefe is a bad head coach? No, that's not what's being said. But
yes,
okay, well, no.
and Dubas is a bad GM for building this team. Don't get me started.
Okay. I didn't think I was going to get you off track like that. But anyways.
I built the team wrong.
The head coach takes the blame, even though I don't think they always should. And I think in this case, that's the same thing. Dos Santos isn't the one who's not producing on the pitch. I think the players need to take some of this blame too. And I think that's fair.
They need to step up.
Yeah, they need to step up. And stepping up is what the CPL is doing, as they are now going on tour, which I think is a great thing because they're going to be playing games across the country in potential markets. They're going to start with this year's season. You, Vancouver FC, and Cavalry will be playing in Kelowna this year, which is really cool because that's a market that they talked about before Vancouver entered the league as a potential next stop. It's a market that I think is going to be a good one. So I could see that being a great spot. I'm sure they're going to probably do games in, Windsor in the next couple of years, as they've been talked about a lot. Somewhere in Saskatchewan will definitely get a game.
What a downgrade from this on tour. You go to Kelowna and then you go to Windsor. You go to
but you know what I mean, right? We're talking potential markets. Quebec will probably get a game too, somewhere in Quebec. Like this has the potential to be really, really good because it'll help grow the league across the country. Something that we obviously have. We have Halifax and Pacific going end to end on our country. But we got to fill in the whole gaps, and by doing these on tour games, I think it's a great opportunity to do exactly that. Get more people involved in the growth of the league across the country.
Just a great opportunity to market a CPL franchise to possible investors. This will give an opportunity to test the market, see what the fan base is like in the area, see if the fans will actually get behind it. I mean, in my opinion, well, first of all, I was at the event when they announced this game. I
Yes.
went down to Kelowna there. The Whenever you talk about expansion teams, it's not necessarily just investors. Is the city, is the
Mm-hmm.
council, are the taxpayers in favor of bringing in a professional franchise to the town? When I was there in Kelowna, tons of positives. The council was all there in the meeting. I was speaking to some of them. The mayor was there. They want professional soccer in Kelowna. So right away, that's one roadblock that they've kind of checked off there. You have the council, the town, the city in favor of bringing a franchise. There's already talks about where they could put a potential stadium in Kelowna as well, which again is another stadium, another roadblock that they would be
Huge
able to tick
roadblock.
off. The next step will be when that game comes. I believe it's June 16th, Cavs versus Van FC. Is if the fans are there. Is there a fan base there? So it's now putting pressure back on the community of Kelowna. You know, your leaders of the town have said they wanted a franchise there. Now let's show out the day. It's going to be a beautiful summer day in Kelowna. Let's get 4 or 5 thousand. Let's fill the Apple Bowl. That's the stadium where the game's going to be. A nice natural grass field. We drove by it, checked it out. They're going to be bringing in stands, so should be 360
Love
stands
that.
being brought in. I think it's going to be a great aesthetically. It's going to look really good, but it all depends if you could get fans in seats at that game, um, and if that can go and the game can be a success there. You have fans there, the council's in favor of it. Now you have investors that are either watching at home or they're live watching the game. They're going to be like, you know, this is something that
This
can
could be
grow to
something.
something big. I believe, yeah, this could be something. I want to invest my money and my time and my business and my partners. We want to put energy into this to build it. So now there's going to be pressure on the CPL to make this event a success, but now there's also pressure on the city of Kelowna uh, to show out on June 16th and show potential investors that Kelowna deserves a CPL franchise. I think the city, I mean, we're talking about how it's difficult to recruit to go to Winnipeg. You're going to have guys terminating their contracts to get a chance to live in Kelowna. This place is beautiful. It's the first time I've been there. Driving in, it looked. I was sitting, we were at a very nice hotel. It kind of had an infinity pool, the mountains, the lake there were in the background. It looked like AI.
Yeah.
It looked like my Apple TV screensaver. It just looked fake.
Yeah.
This is a beautiful city. I was
That's where
blown
they
away
take the
with it.
pictures for the Apple TV screensaver. It's just in Kelowna.
I don't know if you're bantering me or not, but I would believe you if you said that. Beautiful spot. So let's hope the game is a success. Great idea by CPL to be testing these markets. I think it's a wicked city to start off with, and hopefully from there we could see more games. Maybe two next year. One is good this year to start it
Yeah,
off.
it's the starting point.
Can we go on tour twice next year? Because again, we need to see expansions coming fast.
So,
I'm getting bored of playing the same 8 teams.
well, I mean, outside of just that too, like there are huge pockets of this country that just don't have teams right now, right? Like we talk about Quebec, we talk about that West Prairies area between Calgary and Winnipeg. It's a lot of space in a big country that just don't have teams to support. I mean, we're getting now a League One out west, which is great, and obviously League One Quebec is huge. But to have that professional team, the side that kind of grows. So I think the question that I have for you, Niko, as not necessarily a player, so take your player brain out for a second, right? As someone who wants to see this league grow and the sport grow in our country, what are other markets that you think need to be capped. Like I already mentioned Quebec, I said Saskatchewan. Where else do you think they need to put team EPL? So by doing that, they might be going to games with this on tour. Where do you think they should go?
Ooh, bring Edmonton back.
Yep.
I think there. I would love another East Coast team. I've heard things of St. John's.
Yep. I've heard that too.
Maybe it would be a good one. I think Ontario and the GTA. It's difficult to find the right area, but somewhere in Ontario, I think they could hold another CPL franchise
I think
there.
Peel would
I
be a
think if
great
you
spot.
get
Somewhere like
yeah,
Mississauga.
the difficult thing is, I think you can't bring a team too close to York right now until York really solidifies their
Fair.
fan base.
Fair.
I think, and that's definitely a CPL priority
Well, I think
right
York
now.
solidifying a stadium is probably a bigger deal than the fan base first. Get the stadium, and then the fans will come.
Listen, whatever it takes for York to solidify that fan base,
Yeah.
whatever they got to do, whether it's a stadium, tickets, team, whatever,
Yeah.
let them sort that out and then bring in another team
Okay.
in
Fair
there.
enough.
I mean, just if you include that Quebec, I mean, Quebec should have two teams.
Agreed.
So sure, you bring in one there, then put in two there. If you include all of those Saskatchewan thing, we're looking at around a 15, 14 team league right there. That's a good start.
Agreed.
And that's kind of covering the vast majority, the width of this country. But just going back to the Kelowna point, and you said, they need this will help grow the game. They don't have a semi-pro or professional team to look up to in Kelowna. The mayor said there at the meeting, 7,000 youth soccer players in the city of Kelowna.
Oh, it's
So
huge.
for them to have a professional soccer team to not even support, but out of those 7,000 kids, let's just say 2,000 of those kids have this dream, this goal of being a professional soccer player. They could get now role models in their community that will be doing events in their community that they can see, that they can interact with, that they can talk with, have conversations with. We talk about growing the sport. Expansion is going to grow the sport, and it's about the youth. It's not about me, old guys like me that just want new teams to be playing against. It's about the young kids that are eventually going to be growing to my age later, and what an opportunity for them.
Agreed, 100%. And I agree with all the ones that you said. I'm going to add in, I do think London might be a decent shout in Ontario as well. Huge,
and that's
huge
far
soccer
enough.
market.
That's far enough from York where you could put that in, even if York isn't sorted at that time.
Yeah. And I know Windsor obviously has talks about expansion, so that's also a potential spot.
Clanahan has the rights to a CPL franchise in Windsor, but
they need a stadium.
Again, I don't think it's moved. Yeah, I mean, they need a lot. I think that's pretty far behind right now.
But at the same time, like if we're talking just in general, like those are potential spots too. I don't, off the top of my head, I don't really have another spot in Ontario, but I agree with you. Saskatchewan definitely.
Yeah, one in like Yukon. Yukon. I heard it's sick in the summertime.
It is absolutely. Go up to Whitehorse.
If you look at like the Norway leagues and Finland, there's always that one random team in like way up in the north.
Yeah.
That has a club. So I mean,
potentially.
I'm sure that's always a possibility. That, but maybe in like 2035, Yukon can get a team.
Yeah. Well, why don't we?
I'll be the GM of Yukon.
You're going to be the GM of Yukon? Oh, goody. All right, well, let's move on. It's time for Twitter Watch. I mean, I love the on tour, and let's start with a team that is kind of already balling out right now and might get a team early. CS Saint Laurent showed out really, really well in the CAN Championship game. They're in preliminary expansion talks with the CPL to join as Quebec's first Canadian Premier League team. Sources confirm several investors have expressed an interest at potentially giving CS Saint Laurent the capital to make the jump. Niko, you see that news, you see that little tweet coming out. What do you think about that after their little run in the CAN Champ right now?
Yeah, I think it makes sense. I mean, that home game against TFC looked like a sick atmosphere.
Yeah.
Looked like already a CPL. It looked like better than most CPL atmospheres, actually. So it doesn't surprise me. Again, And you're a millionaire, you know, you're interested in buying professional soccer. You see Canada soccer is on this up and up. And then you just catch a glimpse of images from that game, of that fan base, of the tifos in the stands, the flares going off, and a competitive team and a group of players there. Doesn't surprise me that investors are like, oh, I'm now interested in moving forward. Again, I hope something works out, but great news if you're a Quebec soccer fan. They need a team. We've been saying this for so long. I'm beating a dead horse by just
Yeah.
repeating it, but doesn't surprise me. Now let's just hope it could take one step forward because we've heard these rumors a bunch. This seems like the first time, though, it's investors have kind of
Yes.
really been in the rumor mill. I haven't really heard that word. I've just heard like we got good players here. They love their soccer here, but there's never been that like ownership group that's been missing.
Yeah.
So now to hear that's been added to the rumor, promising.
I also think that they have the fan base already there. They've also shown over the last few years that they can produce talent from that League One side. Those two strikers that they have right now are talented. There's a few other
So
players.
are you talking about Mamadou Kane?
Mamadou Kane, I know, didn't come from them, but yes, he's one of them. And then they also
No,
have,
he's from that area.
he's from that area, but I know he didn't come up through their system. Like I know he's been
Okay,
other
gotcha.
places, and then I can't
He's
remember
a
the
CF
other guy's
Montreal
name.
product.
Yeah, but I can't remember the other guy's name. They have another striker who was playing beside Kane, who was I was watching that game against TFC. Every time he touched the ball, he looked dangerous. He didn't get anything going forward because he was getting the ball a lot further back than he normally does in the League One level. But when he did get possession, he looked very good. And I think that's like you could see that squad is not that far off, but they're not a CPL level right now. You start adding CPL players around that team could be very good.
Yes. If they can get a franchise and you get all the Montreal, Quebec guys, all the French guys coming back to that team, not only would that team be the swaggiest team because Montreal guys love their fashion and you know their fits are.
Top in the league.
I wouldn't wear them.
Well,
They're different, but by all means, they got fashion. I'm not a fashion guy. I'm not gonna, but they would also be easily the easiest team to hate. French guys got this arrogance, they got this swagger, they think their shit don't stink.
yep.
Um, but they're good. So they would be such a good team, but you would rivalries and you know some fiery games. I can already see it. So if CPL can see that as well, they would want to add this team as quick as they can. You said right off the bat of the show you love the drama. You're here for it.
Love the
You
drama.
put Montreal. You put a Quebec team in this league. Drama awaits.
Man, that Ottawa and whatever team is in Montreal matches will be electric.
Quebec. We gotta stop saying Montreal. Just Quebec.
Well, no, but CS Saint Laurent, if that is this whatever they name them, if they move up to the CPL, they are Montreal based, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it would be
electric.
Yeah. Speaking of, you mentioned that CPL players understand the fire that these guys were playing with. Well, Halifax Wanderers' Dan Nimick had some interesting words to say post-match after their loss to CS Saint Laurent. And he had this to say: "We know they're not better players than us. They just wanted it more." It was a blunt post-mortem by Halifax defender Dan Nimick. You can go to Northern Tribune to read more about that. He's not wrong. He's 100% right.
What do you think about that? What do you think about that comment? And if you were to like break it down,
I actually think it was like the most fair way to say, "Hey, they showed up and we didn't." Like, yeah, he mentioned that the fact
but
that
more so saying that they're not better players. He knows they're not better players than them. What do you think about that? Do you agree?
I'm going every single player, and we're going an 11v11 breakdown. He's right. These are semi-pro players going up against professional players in the CPL. There's a reason that these guys are professional and the other guys are semi-pro. Either they're not getting scouted properly or they weren't offered enough to leave home. That's really, like, at this point where they are, that's really the reason. So either they're not good enough.
Maybe they're just not at the level. Yeah.
Either they're not good enough, which is what Dan is saying, or they're good enough, but they're just not, they either don't have good representation or they're just not getting what they wanted from a professional contract, so they're not leaving home. Either way, I thought what he said was fair. Now, is it probably good to say immediately post match when your emotions are really high? No, because it probably comes off across a little bit arrogant. I don't think it is personally. I'm just like I'm going from the 360-degree view.
I get you. Yep.
Right. I think the statement's fair. It sucks to say because, again, as I said earlier, I think a lot of those CS Saint Laurent players are very talented, and a couple of them probably should be in the CPL. But if we're going 11v11 and we're looking at the two rosters, Halifax players are better player for player. But they lost that game, and CS Saint Laurent balled out in that game. They looked so good, and they took it to Halifax. And that's what happened.
What Dan said is completely right. They looked like they wanted it more.
They absolutely
tenacity, the aggressiveness that they were playing, they looked like they wanted more. But it's so funny because you see, they win and everyone goes off. Everyone loses it for them. It's like, all of these guys deserve CPL contracts. How are they not in the league? Blah, blah, blah. It's like, there's so much more
that makes a professional player.
That it takes. Exactly. So to just be saying a statement like that and say it with such conviction and just believe that it's 100% true is so ignorant to professional football. And I don't agree with it. That's why I love the comment from Dan Nimick, because this is a professional player that understands what it takes to be a professional player. So he said that. He's like, we obviously know they're not better players than us, but at the same time, it takes a man, and it's a leadership role that Dan Nimick has on that Halifax team, and says he was blunt and said they wanted it more. So he cops it, but I like how he kind of it almost like just like in a way is telling basically Canada soccer media to just like calm down with like all these like.
And here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this one, Niko. He's not saying that none of those players are good enough to play in the CPL. That's not the statement that was made. I think if you look at that roster, there's probably 2 or 3 that, if given a chance, could potentially be CPL players.
2 or 3 of those guys that you are probably referring to have had multiple chances in the CPL, and they haven't stuck.
Maybe. I don't know them well enough. I'll be honest with you. I just watch what they do in the League One because that's what I've seen them in.
Mamadou's been on 3 CPL.
Mamadou's the exception. Sorry. I did know about him. The other ones that I'm thinking of in my head, I don't know if they've had chances, but regardless, we can talk about that off air. But if we're talking just pure skill level, there's probably 2 or 3 guys that may be able to crack a CPL roster. But it takes so much more than just being skilled to make a professional player, and that's maybe what they're lacking. I don't know. I don't know these guys personally enough. I don't know if they've even been given chances, some of these guys. Again, outside of Mamadou, I know him. There's so much more to it, and that's not what Dan was saying, is that these guys don't have some skill. He was just saying if we're talking pure talent level and professionalism, that they're not on the same level. That's all he was saying.
Yeah, not to sound like I'm this hater and stuff like that. I think after performances like that, and also how they showed against TFC, I think it warrants them an invite to preseason or like a month trial, look at a CPL franchise.
Agreed.
But then from there, if the coach, the management of those CPL clubs decide not to take them, it's not outrageous. There's reasons why.
It's on them at that point. It's not on the clubs. It's on them for not living up to the standards of a professional player.
Yeah. But what I was reading is based off that result, they all deserve contracts.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I know exactly what you're saying. I totally get what you're saying. Yeah. I'm not arguing that point. I'm just saying, like, that's not what Dan was saying, is that, like, oh, none of these guys deserve a chance. A couple of them probably do. That's, like, let's be honest here. A couple of them may deserve a shot, but you have to earn the shot through the rest of the season. You can't just have 1 or 2 good games and expect to be handed everything. You need to show that you are professional, that you earn every single step that you get in order to get a shot. And then when you get that shot, you have to ball out as well as be a professional off the pitch, because if you're not going to be kept around. Simple as that. Right? And
good on Dan to say that. I liked it.
I agree.
I liked it. I smiled a lot when I saw it.
A little bit of Canadian men's news. Let's go to Bordeaux and the young keeper who is technically Canadian eligible, Gregoire Swiderski, is expected to be called up by the Canadian national team for their friendlies against France and the Netherlands on June 9th and June 6th, respectively. Niko, what do you think about that? Bringing in the 20-year-old keeper from Bordeaux
I think it's young. I think if they do see a lot of upside in him, they're trying to entice him to commit
and
to,
cap time.
playing for Canada, yeah, in the future. Again, this is kind of what I said at the beginning. Jesse March bringing in players that have new faces into the group. I think when you're the head coach as well, recruitment and Berhalter, no, was it Berhalter? No, Klinsman, when he was with the U.S. national team, his like big thing was, okay, let's try to find, you know, footballers that, have American heritage in them, are maybe able to get a U.S. passport and then try to bring them into the
And
U.S.
cap
men's
time.
national team in cap time. So I don't mind this idea. I'm sure there's other players along with this keeper that Canada will look to
Yep.
do it in. What keeper misses out? If I'm one of those guys, if I'm a Jonathan Sirois, if I'm a Dane St. Clair, if I'm a Maxime Crepeau, am I disappointed if I get dropped and this 20-year-old gets brought in? Sure, maybe. But again, that's the kind of the competitiveness that you just got to be used to when you're playing at the absolute peak of professional football. Uh, but again, especially if he gets a game, I mean, we talk about these CS Laurent guys getting an opportunity. He gets a game against one of these big oppositions. I'm sure he's going to be pretty busy.
Yeah.
What a test, and let's see what he's all about.
Does this spell the end
If
of
I'm
Borjan?
Luca Garvin, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the end of what? I don't.
Of him
I
being like
can't imagine.
called into the team. It's kind of the end. Because now
Mm,
you mentioned we have Crapo, Dane St.
he might
Clair.
get like a farewell camp, maybe something
Fair.
like that, or something like that. But yes, as for like playing a significant role in the Canadian men's national team, I would say yes.
Because you mentioned three off the bat that have been coming to camp. Gavron is also playing pretty well for TFC. I know Johnson's back now, so he's not playing as much, but he's been playing pretty well.
He
Now
played
you bring
against
in this
CS
20
Laurent,
year
and they
old.
actually had some shots.
Yeah. But now that you bring in the 20-year-old in too to camp, like that kind of that's five guys and six if you include Borjan. That's a lot of bodies to bring into camp.
It's seven if you include me.
Well, yeah, you too, but you're right. I'm sorry. I should have included you first.
Listen, I don't know where you're going with that. Yeah, all right, but keep it at that.
uh, from one player coming in to two players on their way out of their respective clubs, Julia Grosso announces she is leaving Juventus, and Juventus did a nice little post for her. Huge moment there. She's been fantastic for them, multiple trophies. She's won pretty much everything that she could with Juventus, so she's going to be on their way out. Could be looking for a new club. And Io Akinola also out at TFC after a mutual contract termination. He made 4 appearances with Canada and has 5 appearances this year for TFC prior to being let go. Niko, I'll let you start with whichever one you want to start with here. Which of these is actually a bigger impact for you?
I mean, Grosso was playing a much more significant part at her club compared to Io at TFC. So from that big, I'm assuming she's going to go to NWSL.
Lots of talk actually going to the WSL, joining like United or
In
City
England.
there. Yes, I've seen a lot of England connection, but
Hmm,
potentially coming to the NWSL as well. Like it's all up in the air at the moment, but I heard a lot of England as well.
that would be cool. I would like to see her stick out in Europe for a couple more years. The WSL is, I mean, is it fair to say that's now the biggest women's league in the world? Is it bigger than NWSL?
I would think so, but it's pretty close. Like the
Pretty
competition
close.
level is pretty good, especially with some of the players that the NWSL has been bringing over in the last 2 years or so. They're bringing
Yeah.
top talent. So I think the WSL is slightly ahead.
I think it would be more so what kind of lifestyle does she want?
Yeah.
Does she want to stick to the European life, or does she want to get back to familiar roots in North America and go to NWSL? So be curious to see where she goes. As for Io, it just seemed like ever since he got injured, he couldn't really find his true form. For guys coming back in your hometown in Toronto, sometimes the lifestyle there can consume you. Well, that was the case with Isle, but it just couldn't really find his feet. So maybe a, a change of scenery will be the best thing for his career. Does he make an interleague move in the MLS? Does he go down to CPL, which I've heard rumors of? I just can't imagine him going to the CPL. Or does he kind of break into a whole different market? Does he go into like Asia,
Yeah.
where the money is a lot more? Uh, it's a lot more what he's accustomed to, and he is a big, strong, powerful forward. Normally in those Asian leagues, that's the kind of import players that they look to bring in. So I could see a move going to that Asian market happening. But again, keeping a close eye on that. And whatever he does next, let's hope we can, because Canada soccer fans want Io to get back to the form that we used to see him at. At his
In that
best,
bubble for the
he's a
MLS,
top striker.
the MLS bubble back in 2020, he was phenomenal. And if we can get him back to doing that, that's just another player you bring into camp for the Canadian men's national team, firing on all cylinders. You can never have too many guys firing on all cylinders. I think it was a coaching. He didn't really mesh with the coaches that TFC have had over the last 4 years. I think that just when you're coming back from injury, having a coach that believes in you and has that kind of backing for you goes so far. And I just don't think he had that. And hey, it is what it is. I'm not saying that it's all on the coaches. I'm not saying it's on Io all as well. It didn't work. You move on. Let's hope he finds somewhere to play and get his footing back. Because if he can, that's just another weapon, right?
I think he was making like 800K too at TFC. So to get that contract off the books will be great for potentially bringing some new names in.
Yep.
Or just freeing up some cap space in the summer window.
Absolutely. All right, Niko, it's time to get to our games of the week. And we're kind of doing a weird one because we're probably doing another episode this week. So we're actually just going to do our Can Champ game of the week. Do you want to go first? Do you want me to go first?
You go first. I can't remember what I told you.
All right. Well, I'm looking at the Cavs Whitecaps game. And I know Vancouver's up 2-1 on aggregate going home, which is huge. But I think this is going to be a very entertaining match. Cavs still with a lot to prove this season, haven't really been their peak Cavs that they've been in seasons past. If they could get a result here going into Vancouver, it would be incredible. It's going to be a hard-fought game. This is a Whitecaps team that is struggling, trying to find their footing again over the last 3 weeks, as we mentioned. Cavs trying to just get their season going properly. I love this game. I was going to look at one of the other games, but this one just jumped out to me, so this is the one that I want to watch.
Cavs have done it before at BC Place, so they'll look to repeat history.
Yeah.
Great pick from you. For me, I got the other MLS versus CPL matchup in Can Champ, and I got Forge Montreal. Like we said, 1-1 in the first leg at Forge. Forge was actually up 1-0. Kind of a mistake in the back, which let Montreal get back into it, tie it up. We talked about Montreal. Can they, kind of, they need a moment where they could like get a spark. Doing a little cup run can sometimes do that for teams. Beating Forge convincingly can also help with confidence. So if they could get a scraping by, getting a 1-0 win, sure, you advance. It's good, but when you look at the big picture of the season that they have, they need a convincing win against Forge. But looking at from a CPL and Forge perspective, what an opportunity to take advantage of a team when they're down on form, and again keep proving that CPL is at a level much higher than people believe, and it would be a big statement victory to go away from home and get a result and move on. I definitely feel like Forge had their eyes on that match this week, and let's hope they represent CPL really well, which, I mean, no club has done it better at representing the CPL than Forge. So I'm confident that Forge is actually going to get the job done here. But again, that's the game I'll be watching this week.
Yeah, I was also interested in the all CPL match between Atletico and Pacific. Or sorry, yeah, Atletico Pacific. Yeah, Pacific and Atletico.
You're
I'm not
still
crazy.
sick.
0-0 after the first leg. It's going to be an interesting one. Two teams that are playing well in the season. Going to be a hard fought match. You know that's going to happen. So 3 really good games. TFC, CS Saint Laurent. Probably not going to be as tight as the other 3. Let's leave it at that. All right,
Good opportunity for those guys.
Absolutely. Great opportunity. But probably not going to be as hard fought as the other 3 matches. We can agree. That looked like it hurt.
Yeah.
All right, dude. That's all I got for you this week.
Longer.
All I got for you this week. Been fun. We got a lot to talk about.
That's all I have for you, Nick.
Fair. You're right. I'm sorry.
going to enjoy my long weekend. I hope you enjoy your long weekend. CPL fans, watch this Halifax Valour game. My eyes are on that. Can one of these teams get a win? If they get a draw, really disappointing for both franchises. But yeah, let's lock it in that we're doing a show Wednesday, Nick.
Yep.
Yeah? Can we do it?
Done.
Okay. Perfect. Lock it in. And but first, follow us on socials, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, it all. Follow Nick McVicker on Twitter. He's got a lot of good tweets. He's, posting about Canada soccer. I'm a bit quieter on that front, but he's our journalist. I'm our player. Nick, any final thoughts?
No, man, I love being back. Sorry, it's been a while. I mean, if I wasn't out for the count this week, we would have talked Wednesday, but a couple more stories that we got to talk about instead. So it was good. Looking forward to Wednesday. Folks, make sure, as you said, make sure you follow us on socials. We will be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. Don't miss it. Until then, thank